that hurt 49ers defensive end Keion White. It happened early yesterday morning at a nightclub in San Francisco's Mission District. Our partners at SF Standard report White was hosting a Super Bowl party at Delia Lounge on Mission Street. At some point, White got into an argument involving rapper Lil Baby. That's when White was shot in the ankle. Nearby residents say they were woken up by police activity.
Lil Baby is facing some serious legal trouble after allegedly firing shots at NFL player Keion White, and things are getting messy fast. He finally had to speak publicly to defend himself, but from the way everything is moving, it seems like federal agents might already be stepping in. This situation is starting to look like it could be the end of his career as people know it. Before diving into Lil Baby's response, the whole story needs to be laid out because the details are wild. This is the kind of moment that shifts a person's entire life.
The window is like right by my bed, and so I saw lights. Like I think that's why I woke up at first. I think I kind of knew that it wasn't like the most safe place, but honestly, I mean, like it kind of seems par for the course. Like I'm not like entirely like, how could this happen here?
And right now, everything around him feels unstable. This isn't just some typical rap drama. This is nightlife energy, professional sports money, and legal pressure crashing together in the worst possible way. Make sure to subscribe because the pieces of this story the mainstream avoids are exactly the ones people need to hear. The truth behind what went down is deeper and more chaotic than anything being reported on the surface. Now, Keion White is not just some random guy. He's a 27-year-old NFL defensive end.
8/11, police are working to try to find out who opened fire on the set of a music video reportedly featuring Atlanta's very own Lil Baby.
The shooting happened just before 5 o'clock tonight. There is a map right here on your screen of where this all took place on Verbena Street. That's in the Dixie Hills neighborhood in the northwest part of the city.
3 men were shot just feet behind me in this parking lot. One shot in the neck, another man shot in the back, the third victim shot in the arm.
6'4", around 285 pounds of solid muscle, a grown man who gets paid millions to tackle people for a living. The San Francisco 49ers had just traded for him from the New England Patriots back in October, and he was having the type of seasoned athletes work their entire lives for. He built his career through discipline, training, and focus, creating the kind of financial stability most people can only dream about. And just like that, in one night, all of that was put at risk because he found himself caught in a situation he never expected to be anywhere near.
Those suspects, as far as the 3 victims, they are expected to survive. As of this hour, Lil Baby's team has not commented on the shooting.
That's what makes this entire story so shocking. Keion isn't someone tied to street chaos or drama. He's a college-educated professional who stays in his lane, handles his business, and keeps his name away from mess. So for him to get wrapped up in anything connected to a shooting shows just how unpredictable and wild that night became. Picture this. It's February 9th, 2025, right after the Super Bowl. San Francisco is buzzing from one end to the other. The city is still glowing from hosting one of the biggest sporting events in America. People are out celebrating everywhere. Keion White decides to throw his own private Super Bowl party at Delia Lounge on Mission Street, a spot known for luxury crowds and high-energy nights. And this is where everything starts to take a turn. Here's where things take a wild turn, because this wasn't some regular party at all. This was a full-on private strip club setup with topless dancers, cash everywhere, and the kind of scene that looks straight out of a late-night film. The police report described the place like it was built for chaos, with multiple adult entertainers picking up dollar bills spread across the entire floor. Some of the women were fully topless, clearly there to perform, and the vibe was far from a simple celebration. This was a full strip club atmosphere tucked inside a private lounge, and that alone already had people talking. But things didn't stop there. Now here's the twist. Lil Baby had just wrapped up a show in San Francisco the night before while on tour. Instead of heading back to the hotel and calling it a night, he decided he wanted to keep the energy going, and somehow that led him straight toward Keion White's private event. The problem was simple. Lil Baby and his crew were not on the guest list. According to the police report, his entourage was upstairs on the main floor of the lounge, but they were pushing to get access to Keion's private section downstairs. When rappers show up uninvited to an NFL player's exclusive party, that's the type of situation where pride gets involved and tension builds fast. Picture the scene. Keion White, a 6'4", 285-pound defensive end built to take down grown men every Sunday, surrounded by friends and family in his own private section, celebrating a moment he earned. Meanwhile, Lil Baby, around 5'8", rolls in with his people trying to get into that same section without having any sort of approval. What exactly was said isn't fully known, but witnesses told police the confrontation got intense fast. One witness said Lil Baby's crew came off aggressive, pushing to force their way into the restricted area. Another said Keion stood firm and refused to let anyone disrespect his space, especially on a night he was hosting. From Lil Baby's side, he might have felt brushed off, since he's used to being treated like top-tier VIP everywhere he goes. From Keion's perspective, this was his event, his money, his moment, and he wasn't about to let anyone walk in like they owned the place. Two men with strong egos, neither willing to step back, and that mix is never good. A witness told police that as the argument escalated, he went upstairs to grab the manager, hoping to calm things down. But before he could return, he heard 2 shots coming from downstairs. That was the moment everything shifted out of control. When the witness came back downstairs, everything had flipped into straight chaos. Keion White was on the floor with a bullet wound in his left ankle, bleeding heavy while people panicked, pushed past each other, and tried to escape the club. The whole vibe went from a wild party to a crime scene in a matter of seconds. But the story gets even stranger. Another witness told officers she heard 4 shots instead of 2, and when police arrived at 4:06 a.m., they found shell casings from 2 different guns, a 9mm and a .45 caliber. That means either one person had multiple weapons or more than one person fired shots that night. Police also discovered an abandoned cell phone sitting in the middle of the mess. Nobody is saying who it belonged to, but investigators are definitely going to pull fingerprints, DNA, call logs, messages, everything they can. That phone could end up being the key that exposes exactly who did what. The police report described the scene they walked into at 4:06 a.m. like something pulled out of a late-night drama. Officers said people were still scrambling toward the exits. Topless entertainers were sweeping up cash, and there was blood on the floor where Keion had been hit. One officer even wrote in his report that he saw multiple scantily dressed women picking up dollar bills spread across the entire floor, some of them topless and clearly adult performers. Imagine being a cop stepping into that scene at 4 a.m. with gunfire reported, dancers half undressed, dollar bills covering the floor, and a wounded NFL player lying there. Nothing about that looked normal. Then there's the part that shows how Keion handled himself. When officers asked who shot him, he refused to answer. No names, no details, nothing. The report straight up says that when asked who fired the shot, White was uncooperative. For someone living a professional athlete's lifestyle, that kind of silence shows he wasn't trying to get involved in anything that could spark bigger trouble. But this is where things start getting dangerous for Lil Baby. This situation is heavier than people think, because this isn't the first time his name has crossed paths with law enforcement. Federal agents have been keeping an eye on him for a long time, and there have been whispers about surveillance and ongoing investigations meant to build a larger case. Ever since Atlanta District Attorney Fani Willis announced she was targeting him and his entire 4PF circle for a potential RICO case, he has been trying to move carefully. Now his name is tied to a shooting involving an NFL player inside a private club at 4 a.m, and that is the exact type of situation prosecutors love to use as fuel. When I say the authorities are going after him, it's not lightweight pressure. They have an entire task force focused on digging into his circle, watching every move connected to him. Federal agents do not just pick a name at random. They have been tracking Lil Baby's patterns for years, checking who he associates with, going through his online activity, breaking down his lyrics, everything they can legally observe. The files they've collected on him are rumored to be thick enough to weigh down a desk. There was one situation in particular that pushed his name even deeper onto their radar, and it was one of the boldest moves he ever made. Lil Baby decided to film a music video in a neighborhood where he knew there were long-standing conflicts. It was enemy territory, a part of Atlanta where tensions had already been high for a long time. Pulling up there with cameras and a full crew was the kind of move most people would avoid completely. But Lil Baby went straight into that block with his production team, acting like the whole area belonged to him. He filmed scenes with his crew showing cash, throwing signs, and making it clear they felt comfortable walking through a place where things had gone bad in the past. To the people from that neighborhood, it didn't look like a random shoot. It looked like disrespect aimed right at them. Anyone who understands street politics knows you can't walk into someone else's territory, record a video that looks like a flex, and expect it not to stir emotions. The group on the other side saw the footage online and felt they had been challenged. Their pride was hit, their image was questioned, and they believed they had to respond in some way. Not long after that video started spreading online, a group connected to that neighborhood pulled up in Lil Baby's area looking for payback. They arrived armed and ready, wanting to send a message that their block was not a place anyone could just walk into without consequence. But here's where the situation turned tragic. The retaliation didn't hit the people it was aimed at. Instead, individuals in the community who had nothing to do with the conflict were harmed during the chaos. These were young people simply living their lives, nowhere near the street issues fueling the tension. Their families were devastated, the entire area was shaken, and authorities immediately turned their attention to how the situation even escalated to that point. Law enforcement looked at the chain of events and saw a direct connection between the music video and the retaliation that followed. They treated it as a sign that Lil Baby's decisions, even if not meant to cause harm, played a role in triggering a dangerous response. That's when officials started piecing together a wider case, arguing that his actions in that neighborhood were part of a larger pattern that demanded investigation. To them, this wasn't just about music or image. It was about real harm in a real community. And that became the moment when the pressure on Lil Baby moved from quiet surveillance to a serious, ongoing federal interest. The authorities started treating everything like a full RICO situation, claiming Lil Baby wasn't just an artist, but the head of a structured criminal crew. In their eyes, that music video wasn't just creative work. They argued it was part of coordinated gang activity that led to serious harm, which meant they believed he carried responsibility for the fallout. From there, investigators went after everyone around him. They dug into the backgrounds of his team, checked social media activity, tracked financial movements, and pulled whatever surveillance they could find. Wiretaps, confidential sources, federal paperwork. The entire playbook was in motion because a RICO case is designed to be heavy and long-term. If prosecutors build enough connections, the penalties can stretch from decades to life. Agents also started studying his lyrics, chalking up every reference to violence, fast money, or street life as possible signs of criminal operations. They treated his music as coded communication rather than storytelling or artistic expression. To them, every bar was another piece they could twist into evidence. When Lil Baby realized the kind of pressure coming his way, he started making moves to protect himself and shift his image. The first step was letting go of his label 4PF, which stood for Four Pockets Full, because authorities were treating it like an organized crew instead of a company. To avoid giving investigators more angles to work with, he stepped away from the brand entirely. Then came the rebrand. He launched a new label called Glass Window, and that name wasn't random. The message behind it was simple. A glass window is see-through. It suggests transparency, honesty, nothing hidden. The idea was to show the public and the authorities that he was stepping into a cleaner lane, separating himself from anything that looked like street business. He wanted to show his world was open, visible, legitimate. His entire image shifted too. He stopped posting anything connected to weapons or questionable behavior and started highlighting business ventures, charity events, and family moments. He wanted to show growth, a transition from someone with a rough past to someone building a real empire with clean money and structured plans. Lil Baby also began distancing himself from the kind of people who attract trouble. In street talk, those are the ones often called crash dummies. Folks who act without thinking and bring unnecessary heat onto everyone around them. He tightened his circle, cut off people who stayed too close to dangerous situations, and surrounded himself with professionals who actually understood business. He brought in trained managers, certified accountants, strong legal teams, and advisors who could help him move correctly. He invested in real estate, food spots, and other legitimate ventures to show the government that his income was coming from legal channels. He wanted every dollar to look clean on paper and in real life. But here's the part that makes everything complicated. Even with all the rebranding, the new circle, the business investments, and the change in public image, investigators didn't automatically back off. They still believed the past hadn't been fully disconnected from the present, and that's where the pressure kept building. You can flip your label name, switch out your circle, and sign every lawyer you can afford. But once the feds lock onto you, shaking them off becomes almost impossible. And now, this San Francisco situation is giving investigators even more fuel to add to their case. For Lil Baby, this might be the moment that pushes everything past the point of return. The truth is simple. When an NFL player gets shot, this is no longer just a local police matter. Multiple agencies step in, the jurisdiction widens, and far more resources get thrown into figuring out exactly what happened. Suddenly, it's not just the streets watching. It's institutions with real money and real power. First, there's the NFL as a whole. The National Football League is a massive industry that treats its players like valuable assets, and they protect them on and off the field. When one of their own ends up injured, they do not wait around for small local updates. They send in their own security experts, private investigators, and legal teams, all working directly with law enforcement to push the case forward. Then you have the 49ers organization. They recently traded major assets to bring Keion White onto their roster, expecting him to be part of their long-term plans. Now their investment is potentially damaged because of a late-night club dispute. That team has resources, influence, and every reason to demand answers and accountability. Even the mayor of San Francisco has stepped into the conversation. Mayor Daniel Lurie publicly stated that any violent incident in the city is unacceptable and wished Keion a quick recovery. He also said he had already spoken with SFPD leadership and the 49ers organization. When the mayor is this involved, and when he's speaking directly to NFL leadership, it's clear that this situation won't fade quietly. But here's the part that truly turns this into a federal problem. The incident crosses state lines. Lil Baby is based in Atlanta, the shooting happened in California, and the NFL itself involves interstate business and travel. That combination places the entire case under federal jurisdiction, which opens the door for the FBI. This gives federal agents the opportunity to tie the shooting to the ongoing RICO investigation surrounding Lil Baby. They can argue that the incident fits into a larger pattern of organized activity, stretching across multiple states and involving violence, intimidation, and potential criminal leadership. Prosecutors can claim Lil Baby runs an organization that operates beyond Georgia, participates in dangerous behavior, and threatens public safety. They can also argue that the shooting may have been done to protect image, maintain standing in certain circles, or send a message about reputation. When prosecutors frame something as an act done to uphold authority within a group, that becomes a powerful angle in court. This situation now has law enforcement, the NFL, a major team, political leaders, and federal agents all watching the same case. And that kind of pressure is exactly what makes RICO charges stick. Everything about this situation lines up with what prosecutors look for in a RICO case. From a legal angle, Lil Baby is staring at both criminal charges and civil lawsuits, and either one alone could hit him hard. Together, they could break him financially and personally. On the criminal side, he could face attempted homicide, assault with a fatal weapon, conspiracy, weapons violations, and possibly RICO enhancements stacked on top. Attempted homicide in California can carry anywhere from 15 years to life. Add weapons charges and conspiracy, and the numbers start climbing fast. A sentence like that could mean decades behind bars. But the civil side is another storm on its own. Keion White could file a massive lawsuit for lost income, medical costs, long-term recovery needs, and emotional damages. This is a professional athlete who had been earning millions per year, and depending on how severe the injury is, his entire career could be at risk. If he cannot return to the field, that becomes a financial loss worth tens of millions. And the 49ers organization could also pursue damages, since they traded valuable assets to bring Keion onto their roster. If their investment is destroyed, they will want someone held responsible for it. All of that could turn into one of the most expensive legal battles Lil Baby has ever seen. So he is now in complete damage control mode, forced to speak publicly because the situation is affecting his entire future. The problem is, anything he says has consequences. If he denies being involved and later footage proves otherwise, that looks deceptive to the public and creates legal complications. If he admits to being there and claims self-defense, he is still admitting to firing on a professional athlete. If he stays silent, people assume guilt. Every option leads to another problem. His lawyers are likely pushing him to stay quiet to avoid giving prosecutors material to use against him. Meanwhile, his PR team probably wants him to get ahead of the narrative to save his reputation. Those two strategies completely clash, leaving him in a position where every move feels dangerous. Behind the scenes, the music industry is likely pulling away from him. Labels do not want to be linked to an artist whose name is tied to a shooting involving an NFL player. Streaming services could quietly reduce his visibility. Concert promoters may start canceling tour dates. Radio stations might hesitate to play his songs. And on top of that, the NFL has influence that reaches far beyond sports. The league has money, connections, and the kind of corporate power that can shift public opinion quickly. If they decide that Lil Baby's situation is bad for business, they have the ability to pressure companies across multiple industries to distance themselves from him. Right now, he is standing in the center of a storm that involves the legal system, major sports organizations, political voices, corporate interests, and public perception. Every one of those forces is larger than him, and none of them move lightly when one of their high-value players is harmed. They can absolutely make sure this man's career comes to a stop. We have seen it happen before with artists who ran into major legal trouble. Their music fades from playlists, their tours get shut down, endorsement deals disappear, and the industry simply moves forward without them. Before long, they are remembered as warnings rather than stars. But this situation carries an extra layer that makes everything even harder for Lil Baby to escape. The street politics in the Bay Area shift the whole picture. The Bay is not Atlanta. The dynamics in San Francisco and Oakland are completely different, and it seems like Lil Baby might have stepped into something he did not fully understand. That region has its own structure, its own voices, its own rules, and people there take community respect seriously. Rolling into a city from out of town and sparking problems can turn into long-term issues quickly. The Bay Area has a long track record of pushing back when outsiders cause trouble. Lil Baby might hold weight in Atlanta, but on the West Coast, he is simply another visiting rapper who walked into a situation and made things worse. And the streets in that region have long memories. He may have created tension with people he never met or even knew existed. There is also a cultural element to consider. The Bay Area is known for strong unity and local pride. When someone from outside comes in and harms a local figure, especially someone viewed as a community hero, it hits differently. Professional athletes carry influence and respect in their cities, and when one of them is hurt, the reaction is emotional as well as political. So, what happens next for Lil Baby? Based on everything in front of him, the outlook is tough. Federal investigators have likely already collected enough material from the Atlanta side to push forward with a RICO case, and this San Francisco incident only adds more layers to their argument. They can claim he leads an organized group operating across multiple states, connected to violence and posing a threat to public safety. That setup fits the RICO framework perfectly, and federal prosecutors rarely go after a case like that unless they feel confident. RICO has one of the highest conviction rates in the justice system, and when federal indictments drop, they are backed by years of prep work, surveillance, and paper trails. If they bring the charges, they do not plan to lose. If predictions hold, we could see federal indictments rolling out within the next 6 months. It likely will not be just Lil Baby facing charges. Investigators usually cast a wide net, pulling in anyone they believe is connected to the organization. And once the case begins, it moves like falling dominoes. Smaller defendants often get offered plea deals to shift responsibility upward, leaving the main target isolated. The government would use everything available to tighten the case. Wiretaps, surveillance footage, online activity, lyrics, financial trails, and any statements that can be connected back to him. And after that, the next likely step would be an arrest connected to the California shooting, which would give prosecutors a direct criminal charge to start from. While he is dealing with the California charges, federal agents in Atlanta will likely drop the RICO indictment. After that, they will push to see if he is willing to cooperate in exchange for a lighter sentence. But anyone who knows how RICO works understands that cooperation does not guarantee freedom. Even people who help still face serious time because the mandatory minimums are heavy, and the government does not hand out easy deals. If Lil Baby goes to trial and loses, he could face a life sentence. If he decides to take a plea, he might still be looking at 15 to 20 years at the minimum. No matter which direction it goes, the outcome would end his career and take away the most important years of his life while he sits in a federal facility. The sad part is how much he had going for him. Lil Baby had talent, money, influence, success, and a fan base that reached all over the world. He built real generational wealth and could have cemented himself as one of the biggest artists of his era. But he kept one foot in a world that never gives anyone a fair ending. He could not separate himself from the streets long enough to fully step into being a mainstream star. This whole situation shows the truth about trying to live in both lanes. You cannot record music about certain lifestyles, promote that image publicly, and then act confused when law enforcement starts treating you like someone tied to organized activity. Once authorities see a pattern, they do not let go. And the streets have never cared about fame, awards, or how many records you sell. The streets take their toll, and it usually happens when a person has the most to lose. Now, he is possibly facing decades in a federal prison. His career might be finished, his future is uncertain, and the people close to him will feel the consequences too. And for what? A conflict in a club with a professional athlete who is just trying to enjoy his night. None of it adds up in a way that makes sense when you look at what is now on the line. So what do you think about this entire situation? Do you believe Lil Baby can fight these charges, or is this the moment everything collapses? Do you think he should have stepped away from the street image once his career took off? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video so more people can join the conversation. This might turn into one of the biggest downfalls the hip-hop world has seen in a long time, and I will keep bringing updates as everything unfolds. We could be watching the beginning of a case that changes the trajectory of one of the most successful rappers in the game today. See you on the next one.